They're two happy women bringing you inspiring stories, politics, pop culture, and lifestyle hacks, all with an eye to making our communities and our country a better place to live. It's the Happy Women Podcast with your hosts, Jen Horn and Katie Gorka.
Thanks for joining us and welcome to another episode of the Happy Women Podcast. I'm Jennifer Horn.
And I'm Katie Gorka.
And before we start, I have to say a big happy anniversary to my favorite happy woman, Katie Gorka. 30 years with Dr. G, and she's still standing. Look at that, and smiling.
Oh, yeah. I know, it's amazing. Okay, so just to be clear, not 30 years married, but
Right.
28 years married. But we met 30 years ago today at a conference in Romania. And I don't know if I ever told you this story, but I had jet lag. So of course I overslept and I came down to this enormous conference room with 80 people around a huge, huge table. And there was one empty seat. This is God. This is God at work, right?
Yes, this is your God moment. It's fate.
Completely. There was one empty seat. It was next to Sebastian. I had barely met him at that point. We'd been in the same van traveling to the venue, but I didn't know him at all. But there was an empty seat. I sit down. I had missed breakfast and he had an untouched coffee sitting at his place and he pushed the coffee over to me and it sealed the deal.
Oh, you're like, this guy knew that I was exhausted and he gave me some coffee. That's so sweet. That is the cutest thing. And so then you started talking, one thing led to another, and here we are.
Oh, yes. And here we are.
Love it. I'm so happy. He was so cute. He put out the cutest picture of you guys. And so I just think it's very sweet. And you guys are an inspiration because you still look like you like each other, which I think is really important in relationships. You know, those couples that look at each other and they're like, eh.
Absolutely. No, we still love each other and we still have a ton of fun together. So
I love it.
I'm blessed.
All right. Okay, so let's jump into it. We have a lot to cover today. Well, I'm just going to, I'll start because we had Trumpchella this weekend and, I live in California. So I actually had media passes and regular tickets to go, but I didn't go because I had to pick my mom up at the airport. And I'm a good daughter and I had promised her I would, and I should have probably just sent her an Uber, but I actually watched every bit of it on television. I had so many friends there, Katie. It was like my friends that are congressional representatives, my friends that are running for office, the media friend. I mean, so many of my Morning Answer listeners were there. It looked absolutely amazing. I did hear some mixed reviews about exiting from Trumpchella, however, because I guess the mayor in this area in Coachella is sort of a blue mayor. And apparently there was some rule about buses being on the roads after 10 o'clock at night. And so they totally slashed the amount of buses that were able to take people out of there. And the way this works, if you've been out to Coachella, there's really nothing around, but they had 3 different staging areas. So they were having people go to 3 different areas so that they would bus them into the venue. And so coming in was fine because everybody was coming at different times. In fact, what was so cool to see is that a lot of people actually spent the night there. You saw all the Trump signs flying off of trailers and off of RVs and on these tents. People made it a camp out night on Friday night. And then Saturday, they were there bright and early. I had someone who left Thousand Oaks in Ventura County at 3 a.m. to get there. I mean, for people who say that California is just a lost cause, you look at that Trump rally and you realize how much California is screaming for leadership. And that's why everybody rushed out to the desert, even though it took some people 4 hours, 5 hours to get out of there. I had one guy that told me he walked 5 miles to get out of the venue to get back to his car.
Wow. And it was huge, right? How many people, what was the estimate on the crowd?
So I heard from the Trump campaign, it was close to 100,000. I don't know.
That's what I've heard.
Check in. Yeah, I need to check in and see what the exact number was. But tens of thousands of people were out there. It was amazing. And apparently they did a great job because it's hot as well. You're even hotter than Palm Springs. So it was about 100 degrees. And I guess they did a great job having water and ice and cooling centers to make sure that everybody was taken care of. Because that's a long time out in the middle of the desert with no real shade or protection. Yeah. But people did it, man. And it was incredible. But from what I hear, this rally featured, I think Kash Patel was out there.
Oh,
Rick
good.
Grinnell,
Love
former
Kash
ambassador.
Patel. Yeah.
I do too. I love cash. And Rick Grinnell's another great guy who's helping us in California. He's really involved with the fight because he lives in our state. He's a former ambassador to Germany. He worked in the Trump administration for a good amount of time, not the full amount, but definitely a good amount of time. He now lives in Palm Springs, so he helped with that rally. He showed up as well. You had Sheriff Chad Bianco from Riverside County who was out there. He did the pledge. Greg Lowry, who is a great pastor, who was out there doing the prayer. And a lot of this was to support. People kept asking me, why is Trump coming to California? It's not a swing state. And you've got less than 4 weeks until the election when he comes. But I think he came for a couple of reasons. Number one, California is filled with riches for politicians. It's a good place to fundraise. But more importantly, we had the ability for him to connect Kamala's record in California with the rest of the country, right? He's got to talk about that. He also was able to come out and secure and shore up this support that he's been getting with the Latino community. There's new polling out in California specifically that shows between 2020 and 2024, Kamala Harris has lost the 20% of support that Joe Biden had with Latino voters that Trump has picked up. He's polling 20 points higher than he did in 2020 with Latinos in California, and that's a huge number. And there's polling that indicates the same throughout Arizona and throughout Nevada. So the Southwest, Latino voters, particularly Latino men, are really supporting President Trump in huge numbers. So that was a way to connect with Latino voters. And then finally, when we talk about the balance of power in the House of Representatives, I fully believe that it's going to run through California. You have Democrats that are throwing millions of dollars into some key races, and all of them happen to be in Southern California. My friend Mike Garcia, who's in the 27th Congressional District, only Republican congressional rep in Los Angeles County, he's pretty much in a tie with his opponent. Ken Calvert, who was at the Trump rally and was name checked and endorsed by Trump while he was in Coachella. Ken Calvert has been in Congress for a long time. They redistricted him, and now he is hanging on. And so it was great to have him there at that rally. Young Kim, who we hope to have on this podcast very soon, also in a tight race. Michelle Steele is in a tight race to defend her seat. And then we do have a big opportunity for Scott Baugh, who is a Republican who almost beat Katie Porter 2 years ago. And Katie Porter quit the race, quit the House to run for Senate. She lost. So now there's an open seat. And Scott Baugh is polling about 2 to 3 points higher than his Democrat opponent. So Trump was out here, I think, to give a push to those people as well. And Speaker Mike Johnson also happens to be in California right now, too, as we record this, doing the same thing. So that's why he was here. But other than just the incredible rally, Katie, the story came on Sunday that there was an arrest made outside the Trump rally, someone who had a shotgun and a handgun in his car. And this story has kind of taken off. And I know you've been following it. I don't mean to keep rambling,
No,
but I'll tell you that I'm friends with Chad Bianco, who's the Riverside sheriff, who got the phone call from Trump because apparently his campaign said that Chad was like the easiest guy to work with for as far as the protection goes. Everybody that I had talked to on my morning show said that this rally was more secure than any rally that they had been to. So Riverside County Sheriff's Department did an excellent job. There was a media entrance, and apparently this black SUV comes driving in. He's got a handmade license plate, essentially. And so they think that's kind of weird. And so they talk to him, and he gives a name that's not on the list. He tries to pass a phony VIP pass. And the deputy said, we need to search your car, because he said it just looked a little strange. Well, inside the car, they find a loaded shotgun, a handgun, high-capacity magazines, boxes of ammunition, and multiple passports and driver's licenses with different names. So the deputy did the absolute right thing. If that's driving into a Trump rally, you're bringing a loaded gun into a Trump rally. I'm sorry, at this day, you can't come in and you're going to be arrested. So apparently the deputy pulls him out, arrests him for having the gun that's not, and neither gun was registered. So before taking them for booking, the FBI and the Secret Service wanted the opportunity to talk to them. So they held the guy at the scene for a while. The FBI and the Secret Service never even came to talk to them, according to the sheriff, Chad Bianco. So Chad took him, the deputy took him to the detention center nearby. They booked him. And because it's California, and this was just a misdemeanor charge, He gets out 4 hours later because the feds didn't want to hold him.
Volatility and uncertainty are everywhere we turn. Many Americans have grown increasingly tired of the reckless fiscal spending, mounting national debt, and the looming threat to the dollar. With never-ending political and global conflicts, Americans are looking for a way out of the fragile paper system and craving a trustworthy asset to help protect their savings. That's why they turn to gold. Specifically, a gold IRA from Augusta Precious Metals. If you have over $100,000 in a retirement account, it's time you learned about the potential benefits of a gold IRA from Augusta Precious Metals. Augusta Precious Metals is a world-class organization that prides itself on top-notch service. Ready to learn more? Get your free guide on gold IRAs today by calling 855-222-6994. Volatility is everywhere. Now is the time to take control of your retirement to secure a brighter financial future with Augusta Precious Metals. Call them at 855-222-6994 today. Yeah, I'm sorry. This is what really shocked me, that he was let out on $5,000 bail. How is, like, okay, maybe it doesn't count as a full attempted assassination, but even I'm just shocked that given what he was trying to do, getting into this thing, given that he had illegal guns, I would have thought illegal guns alone was enough to keep you in prison.
I would agree with you. And I talked to Chad Bianco on the morning show, and I said, Chad, why would you let him go? And he said, well, it's California. The only thing that they could get him on was a misdemeanor. And since the feds didn't talk to him, there weren't any federal charges that they could have tried to hold him on that would have kept him in jail longer. So there was nothing. So he had to be let out with a notice to appear on January 2nd. This is how stuff happens in California, and people shake their head and go, what is this all about? Was this an assassination attempt? And a lot of people are giving Chad some heat because he said it was an assassination attempt on Trump, yet the guy that they're saying did it is out wandering around and now talking to the news media. Well, it's because local police could only hold him on local charges, which was misdemeanor gun possession.
So my understanding is that, I think one of the things that's confusing about this case is that he is apparently a registered Republican. And so they say he's, quote, someone on the right, but he's not really, because my understanding is he considers himself a sovereign citizen, which means this is a I don't know what to call it, like a sect, or it's kind of an ideology where people believe that the government really doesn't have the right to impose its rules on them. They don't have to obey the Constitution. They don't have to obey the laws. Generally people who are sovereign citizens are pretty far out there. They're pretty loopy. It's definitely considered one of the groups of domestic extremists. There was a very famous case where a couple of sovereign citizens killed a police officer. So they are definitely capable of violence.
I know. And it doesn't make me feel any better that he says he was a Trump supporter, because I'm not buying at all what this guy is selling. I'm sorry. If you are a Trump supporter, you know what Trump has been through, and you don't show up with loaded guns and 12 driver's licenses and passports at an event. You just don't do it. It doesn't look right. It makes no sense. And so, yes, he identifies himself as a sovereign citizen, which is how he explains that he doesn't pay registration and he makes his own plates on his car.
Yes, exactly.
I suppose. But this guy also ran for assembly in the state of Nevada. He came in third, which I don't know if that's something to be proud of, but he came in third in the assembly race. He said that he's a Trump supporter, but yet he did vote for Barack Obama. And he said that he was a Bernie Sanders fan, but then he realized that socialism wasn't the way forward. He also said that he's never shot a gun and he is an artist and that he's a peaceful man. So that he has the guns in case someone takes an attempt on his life. Here's my and this is something for your husband, because I can hear your husband's voice in my head when you are someone, the Second Amendment comes with some really great responsibilities. We have the right to defend ourselves. We have the right to have those firearms. But you know what you don't do? You don't drive around with a loaded weapon if you are not prepared to know how to use it. It's not a toy. It's not a joke. I mean, when I got my gun, I went and trained at the range, so I knew how to use it so I could protect myself and keep people around me safe. You don't tell people you don't know how to use it, but you carried a loaded weapon around in your trunk. I don't buy that.
Unregistered
Exactly.
loaded weapon.
Exactly. So you can't tell me that something strange is not going on here. And Chad Bianco when I talked to him today, was kind of beside himself about the feds. We'll see what happens if there's a deeper dive. They said that they didn't think that this was an assassination attempt. President Trump's team said they didn't think of it as that either. But I still say well done to the Riverside Sheriff's deputies. I would have done the same darn thing if I would have seen this guy driving through trying to break into a rally with weapons. I mean, it doesn't make any sense at all.
But it also strikes me, I'm sorry, there's just so much about it that the guy sounds unhinged. And that's concerning, that you have a guy who's mentally not together, running around with weapons. And, he's trying to, if he's loopy enough to try to come into a Trump rally with loaded weapons, what else might he try?
What's
so it's
next?
going to be really interesting to see if this is one of those cases. There have just been way too many of these happening lately. People getting brought in for something, released, and then they turn around and do something terrible. Yeah. And I just want to say this is really close to home here in Fairfax County because we've had multiple cases. In fact, we've just had a major murder trial start underway with an illegal immigrant, and he has just viciously murdered 6 people over a period of several years. He's a gang member. So it's just really concerning. And I do think, that as people think about who they're going to vote for, these kinds of stories loom large for people. I would imagine that there are millions, I'm going to say millions of voters who are deeply concerned that there have been 2 avowed assassination attempts on Trump. And yet here's this guy who it certainly looked that way, and he's been released on a $5,000 bond. I mean, it's just stunning.
And just as a little side note, because we are 3 weeks away from Election Day, and if any of you listening are from California, we have Prop 36 on the ballot. Prop 36 is an amendment of Prop 47. Prop 47 was authored by Kamala Harris in part. She's the one who gave it the title and summary for the Safe Neighborhoods Act. And what that did was reduce felony crimes to misdemeanors. And one of those was gun and drug possession. So part of the reason that this guy, here's the irony here, was released from jail in 4 hours is because of some of the work that Kamala Harris did in California as Attorney General before she left.
That's incredible.
It's wild.
Wow.
I know. All right. Lots of stuff happening on your end, too. So Trumpchella was this weekend. You also did some running around. You were in Pennsylvania. You were at an event for Hispanic voters. Take me through what you were up to.
Yeah, it was really, actually, it was a really fun weekend. For me, this is the fun part of the job is Saturday night, we got to go to a really fun event for Hispanic voters. We have a really hot race down in the Virginia 7th Congressional District, which is the sort of the district just south of me here in Northern Virginia. Great candidate. Derek Anderson is the Republican, has an amazing story. Young single mother. She ran a gas station and I think a little market or something, and somehow, raised these incredible boys. He served in the military, very strong candidate. But what struck me about it was the people who were there. So standing in line, standing around talking with some of the moms who were there, it was really interesting. So these are people who were absolutely not born in this country. But the ones that I talked to were here legally. They are legal to vote. And they were telling me, we were kind of getting at, well, what are the issues that are really motivating you? And it was 2 things. One was education. So one mom was telling me about how she's had to take her kids out of the public school system and move them over into her local church school, which just doesn't surprise me at all. I mean, the what's going on in the schools is terrible. So education is a big one. And it's both the indoctrination, but it's the safety. So we've had a very well publicized case here in the county north of us, Loudoun County, where the school board has tried to suppress the story of an MS-13 gang member who had brought a gun to school. So, I think for a lot of them, safety is the big issue, but it's also what the schools are teaching and not teaching. But the other one is the economy. That seemed to really resonate. So when Derek Anderson was talking and the moderator, was asking people, what are the issues that are really affecting you? And those were the two that were coming up in a big way. So I think that's going to be very impactful. It's also been really interesting that we have seen a very significant shift in the Chinese American community. So, we have really big immigrant population here in Fairfax County. 30% of Fairfax County residents were not born in this country.
Wow.
Yes, it's really a lot, really does a lot to shape the elections. And, in the past, a lot of the Chinese have either voted Democrat or really kept a low profile. And as they've explained to me, you come from a country like China, you are raised to keep your voice down, not to be seen, not to engage politically, because it's, you get yourself in trouble if you do. So it takes a long time for people to sort of unlearn those habits, right? And learn that you can speak out in this country. Well, I want to tell you, our Chinese Americans here, they are all in for Trump because
that's so unusual. I love it.
It's incredible because they're saying to us, they did not leave communism to come to communism. Right. And so I just, because as I'm chair of the Fairfax GOP and I just keep seeing these emails, they're asking for more and more materials because they're handing out all the materials that we can give them. So we've actually translated materials into Chinese and Korean and Vietnamese. We can't keep them in stock. Like they're just flying out the door.
Wow.
So
I love it.
I think that's going to be very interesting. So then the last thing that we did, it was a busy weekend. We spent 9 hours in the car on Saturday to go up to northeastern.
And you're still celebrating your anniversary today.
I know. And actually, we had a great time. So we went up to the factory of Car Arms, which is a great gun manufacturer. Sebastian's a really big fan. He carries a car handgun. And they hold what they say is the largest Second Amendment festival in the United States. So it's an event that goes on for 3 days. Sebastian and I were both speaking, and it was so fun to see not only Scott Pressler's group called Early Vote Action and Moms for Liberty. What happens when the power's out, your phone says no service, and the grid is down? Do you have a backup plan? If you don't have a satellite phone from sat123.com, you're risking more than just missed calls. A satellite phone from sat123.com keeps you connected no matter what. You could be miles from civilization or in the middle of a natural disaster. This phone works when everything else fails. It's your lifeline when the world goes dark. And let's be real, these days anything can happen. But with sat123.com, you're prepared. Sat123 is committed to American values. They believe in reliability and quality that you can trust when it matters most. Don't wait until it's too late. Head over to sat123.com and use code Katie for $25 off. Protect yourself, protect your family, and stay connected with sat123.com. Both of them were there.
That.
Yep.
That's
and they
incredible.
were both there registering voters.
Do you want to know why that's really important? Because
Yes.
Scott Pressler's the first one that I actually read a piece about this. Apparently, gun owners and hunters are not registered to vote. Not in large numbers. And so he found that out and has been registering the heck out of him in Wisconsin. It looks like in Pennsylvania too. So good for him.
Yep. Both groups had said they had registered a bunch of voters. So I thought that was super, super exciting.
Yeah.
But then the other thing I'll tell you, this was kind of fun. Because we had so long in the car, right? We listened to one of our favorite podcasts. And I know as podcasters, we're probably not supposed to promote other podcasts, but I love this podcast. I've been a fan.
And we're happy women, so we can shout out. So we can
promote our favorite podcast. So one of my favorites for years has been a podcast called Red Pilled America, and it's a married couple, Patrick Corelchi and Adriana Cortez. They came out of Hollywood. They were, doing work there, and they just really committed to the idea that, deep dive storytelling and investigative journalism is really, really important. So they have put together this great 4-part series called Which Way America? And they did a really deep dive on both Donald Trump and Kamala Harris to tell the backstories. And I have to tell you, I learned some stuff about Donald Trump that I did not know.
I love it. Okay, let's hear. What'd you learn?
Well, I got to tell you, there's one story in particular. Do you know the story about the skating rink?
Okay, I heard something about that. He's the one that built the one, right? He built the skating rink or something like that.
Well, it's such a good story. It is such a good sort of analogy for our government and what he does. So this was a case where, you have that beautiful skating rink in Central Park that when Koch was the mayor, it went on for 6 years to fix it. Like it had broken. And so part of the problem was they were using copper pipes and Freon. Okay. So every time they laid the copper pipes, people would come along and steal it.
Yeah.
And then they even had police, but the police would go to lunch. Somebody would come and steal it. So Donald Trump cut a deal and he said, I will figure this out. He went and talked to some friend who has a skating rink. He's probably famous. He's probably got a hockey team up in Canada. And the guy said, you don't want copper pipes and Freon. You want rubber tubes and salt water. Donald Trump got this thing done. I think it had been going on for 6 years. Under Koch, still had not been fixed. Donald Trump got it done in a year for like a fraction of the cost.
I'm so glad you told me that story because I had heard something about that story before, but never knew the exact details. But it's such an example of why the swamp doesn't want Donald Trump in there. Because guess what? The swamp would be making money off of the copper pipes every time they had to replace them. Where Trump says, no, we're going to use plastic and salt water. It's amazing. Yep.
I think it really is the perfect story for the difference between Donald Trump and the way things are normally done. And I loved being reminded of that story.
I think that's a really great one. All right, what'd you learn about Kamala?
That she has a history of taking her former boss's jobs.
Okay.
She failed the bar exam the first time.
Hopefully not this time.
Yeah. She failed the bar exam the first time she took it. And then, of course, that's an interesting one in light of today's revelations from Chris Rufo that she has been caught plagiarizing in a big way on a book that she wrote. So I think that's really, really interesting. And this is,
what she and Joe have in common, it sounds like, right? They're both plagiarizing things.
I know. So I don't know. I see Trump going up. I see Kamala going down. It's going to be really interesting these next crazy 3 weeks. I will say
it doesn't matter. It doesn't mean we have to stop our work. That's for sure. We have to keep going.
I wish we could. We can't. I mean, so here's the latest here in Virginia, and it's not just Virginia. I think it's happening in Texas as well. So I can't remember if I've talked about this with you before now, but we had a big thing. Our Governor Youngkin, purged 6,300 people from the voter rolls. I think we have many more non-citizens on the voter roll than that, but 6,300 they were able to take off because they were self-declared non-citizens. Okay. So it's black and white, super easy. Take them off. No questions asked. Well, last week, 2 groups, including the League of Women Voters, sued the Youngkin administration to put them back on. But get this, on Friday, the Biden administration sued Youngkin to put them back on. So we are pedal to the metal right now, fighting back and, telling Youngkin, stand strong. This is crazy. And the Biden administration should not be interfering in Virginia's elections. But it just says to me, boy, they really care about illegals being able to vote.
They want them to vote. And in fact, as soon as I saw this story, I thought of you because we talked about this. And I think I mentioned to you, the same thing happened in Los Angeles where they took 1 million people off the voter rolls. And guess what's those lawsuits come and they add them right back on. If it doesn't show you their hands of the Biden administration, boy, they know they're losing. So they have to keep every method available to them to try to sneak this one out.
I know.
It's unbelievable. All right. Well, lots of good stuff going on. We thank you guys for joining us as usual. And we also thank you for those 5-star reviews. Please, if you haven't done it yet, give us a 5-star review wherever you get this podcast. And if you want to connect with us on additional platforms, all you have to do is go to the SalemPodcastNetwork.com. You can also follow Katie. Just search for Catherine Gorka on Facebook, Gorka Katie on X, and her website, katiegorka.org. That's where you can find out all about her book, Next Gen Marxism, which is available right now, Amazon or wherever you get your books. You can follow me too, Jennifer Horn Radio on Instagram and Facebook, and at Jennifer Horn on X and on Truth. And thanks so much for joining us. It's another episode of the Happy Women Podcast.